be happy to say afterwards, we're very happy to talk about this until the cows.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Yeah, oh no, I just going to check the time. I think we might start. It's a very intimate little group, isn't it? I don't know how we best manage this. I thought I'll start off introducing myself. My name's Diane Bucolic. I work in the School of Medical Sciences at the University of New South Wales. That's really where I'm based, but my role is as a project manager of what's called the Best Network Project, and that's what we're going to talk about today in different ways. The fellow before said he's right, this is a very well-designed auditorium, but we've really got such a small number. I don't know if you people want to come down the front and we can just have like a little chat, because I think with this opportunity, it'd be great to hear about what you want to hear about. I mean, as I was saying before to Tim, who arrived first, this is a project I've been involved with for about 2.5 years, and I can talk for hours and hours and hours about it. So if you'd like to come forward, and we can perhaps make it as interactive and as flipped as you like. Love to. I probably don't even need a microphone, do I? So would people feel comfortable about just introducing themselves and perhaps talking a little bit about what is of interest to them in this before that, I will just give you a little bit of a rundown of what we can cover. We're coming to the end of our project period, and one of the things that the government stressed very highly when the application was put in nearly 3 years ago was that it's great to have these kind of projects funded by the government and to have a flurry of activity and build all this stuff and engage all these academics and get lots of proof of concept happening. But very much the most important thing was to try and have something sustainable after the project finishes. So that's something that we took very, very seriously, and we're very happy to say that while the project officially finishes in about 47 days or something, we actually have an entity that will continue on beyond the project period. And we have 4 or 5 institutions signed up across Australia: University of New South Wales, Queensland, James Cook and University of Melbourne. So what we're talking about today is activities and some ideas that we had around a project, but it's also something that will continue on after the project for a long time, we believe. Of those universities that are signed up, most of them have now integrated what we're going to talk about into their teaching in various ways, so they're going to be in a lot of trouble if it doesn't continue. So those people themselves are very vested in what we're going, the tools and resources and content that we're talking about today. And as the project period finishes, one of the key activities is to try and get a lot more institutions involved as well. So we're talking about a small handful of institutions at the moment, but we have a structure and we have resources and we have programs and plans to actually make that much, much larger, with not only institutions in Australia but institutions in the US with this BestNet having launched globally a couple of months ago, and we've got a support crew and salespeople in the US, so we want it to become a big thing for a long time. The other thing I'll say is when we thought about coming to Moodle Posing, when we were presented at a few different other conferences and lectures and different things, is we put in 2 different workshops. We thought, what would be really good is to have one workshop around the BestNet work and what that is and what we've done in the project, and a lot about the structure that we've put together for this to have longevity. And a really key part of that is how we share the content and how the people within the network create and reuse and repurpose content and contribute that back to the network. That was one idea for a workshop. The other idea for the workshop was to say, one of the really big things in medicine, and it probably covers across a lot of different areas of teaching and learning as well, is teaching with images is a really, really key part, and one of the main areas of activity I guess we've had in the project is around teaching pathology and anatomy. So we thought, now that's a really interesting area to us. We've spent a lot of time and effort on the tools of building up an image repository and how students can use that and interact with it, as well as the academics can use it in their teaching. So that was our second idea for a workshop. So what they said is, they both sound great, why don't you do both of them but all together in one? So what they did was they took the title of one, they being and the abstract for the other. So what's actually in the title? So it's all a bit confused about what we talk about. As I said, we're happy to talk about lots of different things. In the presentation we've got prepared, we've got a fair bit about the whole image database and how the images are being used in teaching. So to give you really good concrete examples of actually what's happening, and also a bit of background on the BEST network. So, what should we do now? Well, people like to have a bit of a, introduce themselves, maybe talk about what their interest is, and that will help us, And I think, given we've got such a small group, we're very, I think it's very boring if I just stand up here and dominate. I'd much rather answer your question and hear from your experiences and take it that way. I might get Stephanie to introduce herself first because she's my co-presenter.
Yes. Hi, I'm Stephanie. I've been working with the BEST network since April 2013, and I primarily work on the image bank itself, so getting contributions from other universities, sorting out data, functionality for the website. So I have a background in molecular biology and cell biology, so I'm bringing that to the table as well, so I help with some of the data about it, and that's where I come from.
So left to right, that's right.
I'm Chris Brown. I'm from TAFE Arena, the administrator and everything else. But I work we've restructured and I work in our community services, health and vocational access business line. So I'm working with nursing staff at
come to the right workshop.
Hi, I'm Denard. Very pleased.
Very good.
Hello.
My name's Lydia Clyden. I'm from the Australian College of Nursing. I work there as an instructional designer, but we offer graduate certificate courses in various nursing specialties. Like you, we need images, but we need good quality ones that are somewhat up to date, as in not 11 years old. That can be integrated into what we're trying to teach without too much in the way of fiddling around.
Yeah, they're hard to source.
Yeah, they're hard to source, and then our education staff can have a hard time going, well, it's not exactly what I want. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be if we look at it slightly differently. We're also developing 2 modules for the BEST network, shared resources. So this project is with 2 of my colleagues, but yeah, we're working on a cardiac arrest unit and an immunology unit, if I remember rightly.
So the College of Nursing is actually a partner within the BEST network, sort of a junior partner, if I can say that. In that one of the things that when the government gave this consortium money, they said, well, that's lovely that you're focused on the university graduates in biomedical area, but does this equally apply to TAFEs and professional development bodies, which I guess the College of Nursing is an incredibly complex, difficult, like you've got a huge range of things that you have to do and develop for. So we have the RCPA is also involved. We've also done trials with high schools and sort of into the post. So RCPA gives us that postgraduates for the people who are already graduated and out of the workforce. So that's great.
Hopefully that lifelong learning sequence happening
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, fantastic.
Oh, hi everybody. My name is Rebecca. I work for the Department of Defence. Have no medical background at all. I'm not interested in the actual medical content. I'm more interested in how you guys have gone about designing your course materials and how people retain and learn from online courses, how you go about it. And everybody's after images, but yeah, wouldn't, and I work in an area designing and delivering, and as well as developing tradecraft over a long period. So I'm looking at how you guys motivate, how you design your packages to motivate students to keep participating. Just looking at how everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, so hopefully we've got a few examples, maybe especially around that thing of how we're creating content and making it easier for academics to become involved and change stuff, so have control over the content, so that it's easy for them to change it and put their mark on it and adapt to what the students want. So excellent, thanks, Rebecca.
My name is Anand and I'm from Australian University. So the team with which I came here, I'm working as a project manager here. So if you might know, we delivered a MOOC this year. So I was managing that project. My background is purely IT. So my specialization is in information systems. So if you ask me why I am here, is I just wanted to know what IT is doing in the space of medical sciences.
So like you, I actually have a science background as a project manager. A token bloke.
That's right, token bloke, Tim Mullany. I'm here from the Australian Government Department of Education, and I work in the area that organised, managed, provided funding to this project, and is now being like a hawk and trying to get progress reports.
So you have to say nice things about us because he goes back to
We did invite him a lot.
We did invite him a lot.
So
We provided
just
for
checking out.
but we thought it would be good for him to see what we're doing in live. Okay. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing. I think that, I think we can keep this as informal as possible. I think it probably is worth me just going through a bit of a blurb about the BEST network. You get to see our videos and how we've been very focused on not just involving, the signed up partners and a very small number of academics, but trying to get the word out and the engagement out as much as possible to give us this longevity and sustainability. So I'll just go through that a bit, but I'll try and keep it as brief and as casual as possible. As I said, I think it's good if people want to interrupt. So what we've got up here at the moment is the front page of our portal of best.edu.au. This is, I guess, what we leave as a legacy to the Australian community. There's bits of the portal that will be accessed where people have to pay because there's other tools and licensing, but But for example, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, but Chris, in our medical image bank, and Stephanie will go into a lot more details later, the images there will be accessible by yourself. Like there's certain tools that you won't be able to use because again they weren't funded through the project, but essentially it gives us a portal where people can go and check stuff out and see what content's there, and they can access it and they can use it and view it. Feel free to go and join now for free. That gives you, so that way we can regulate who goes there, provide information for you. It's obligation free. Institutions may at some point decide to pay up for some of these other tools that are associated with the network, but this part is obviously entirely free. And down the bottom you can just see all the partners, and hopefully we've got College of Nursing in their right logo there. Yes. Because College of Nursing had just merged just when we started. Sorry?
TCOM and Royal College of Nursing merged to become Australian College of
Yeah.
Nursing.
Australian College of Nursing, okay. I'll just let you read that. They're pretty grand visions, but we didn't want to limit ourselves in the way that we implemented what was, the goals and objectives, so we kept them very broad. I guess the most important line is the bottom line, is that we're actually always focused on getting quality and stuff that people can actually use, and that's one of the things we want to go through today, is actually show you how some of this stuff's being used today. About 6 months ago we actually launched the BEST network down in Melbourne at the University of Melbourne, and this is just some footage from that launch to give you a bit of an idea of the kind of activity that's happening around the BEST network.
Educational programs that may have origins over 100 or 150 years are going to move into a new era of greater connectedness.
It's about being part of this movement. We don't want to be left behind, we want to be right there at the edge.
Today, we're going to revolutionize healthcare education. We're going to do it together.
The BEST network is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for healthcare, educational institutions in Australia to make use of what we believe is a wonderful platform, a platform that we think makes the business of teaching and learning simpler for everyone.
Looking at the horizon in terms of where med-ed and health professional education is going is kind of connectedness to resources, and to some extent that's what today's all about.
SLICE is a collection, a biomedical image collection. Macro, micro, imaging studies, images that are put in a place where they can be shared. And the SLICE is all about sharing biomedical images. SLICE has enormous potential, but to be successful, it really needs collaborative engagement from others.
The EdTech revolution has burst into the scene, and a tsunami of innovation is washing through our industry. At the forefront, personalized and adaptive learning, promising to change education forever. You want the learning experience to be intelligent and adaptive. You want to use the extraordinary power of computers more than just shifting the printing costs. You can deliver online learning experiences that are as intelligent as one-on-one learning.
And this was extremely appealing to me because I would have the chance perhaps to have the students undergo that learning experience. It's going to be a whole lot cheaper to run because it's going to be virtual. We don't have to try and get the equipment that we can't actually get and maintain readily in the lab. Now I'm able to control some of the students' learning more directly.
What I think is really excellent about the way this is working for us, that we've got a bunch of academics, not just one, who are able to input easily into this program because of its shareability, and we're hoping that we'll have more collaborators.
So as I said, we've been going around and presenting the best network to quite a range of people to get the awareness as much as possible. And I just included a couple of quotes from last week when this one I was down in Melbourne, and someone who's sort of quite high up in teaching in the sort of management, I guess. I don't want to say who he is, but very said he came out and said this, and it's the kind of conversation that's happening in the management level, and how this really spooks the academics because they don't quite know how they're going to get their lectures, how they would reduce lectures to 50%. And the technologies aren't largely in place at the moment across the different universities, so it really does, I think, indicate the kind of change that's going to have to happen. And one of the things the Best Network is doing is trying to get academics to work together and share as much as possible so they can get their head around how they might achieve this kind of thing. Now in some ways, and this was another quote from another academic actually at UNSW, and marking is probably a good thing. This statement said a lot of things to me, that marking isn't automated. Marking is a great way of getting feedback back to students, so it's a great thing to be doing. But even though the lecturing is going to be reduced face-to-face, there's still, the actual lecture is going to be reduced by a large amount. There's still going to be an incredible amount of face-to-face, but in much more intimate groups. So how academics are going to manage that if marking continues to be such a large part of their time commitment. So I think, yeah?
Yeah, marking, yeah.
So, at UNSW, and this is my first job in university, one of the things that I just get bowled over by is the amount of paper marking that these academics do. I was going to say by the wheelbarrows of people bringing in their marking, and if they want to run quizzes, and especially so few of them are actually taught, a lot of them are in labs or lecture theatres, so they don't have access to computers. So while these academics really want to do the right thing by their students and give them ongoing quizzes and all the rest of it, it means a huge amount of marking for them.
Online and paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't say just because we're online it reduces the marking. No.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, there's just, people are submitting more. Yeah.
Yeah, they submit more.
Yeah.
Longer, they submit more frequent.
Yes, more frequently, shorter pieces. Yeah.
And the cohorts are getting bigger. Anatomy at the University of Melbourne went from teaching, I think it was a 200 student cohort in first year to 800, because they've amalgamated all the anatomy into one area. So virtually the same curriculum is being taught to 4 times as many people, and that's only happened over a couple of years. So you see those increases in cohorts, and it's going to continue. So I think initiatives like the Best Network and all these technologies, the Best Network, I guess, is important to say, it's not a learning management system. It sits very nicely alongside Moodle, because Moodle, there's lots of things that the Best Network and the tools and technologies and the philosophies behind it can't be done through Moodle. This is largely based around trying to get academics talk to each other, share stuff, repurpose the content, and the image bank is one of those key initiatives. So this is a little bit about the project. I won't go into it in huge detail because I guess I think probably it's more interesting for you to actually see where we've got to at this point. But it does sort of show you, and the timelines is the beginning of the project. Really the thing that kicked this off was for the 5 years before that, or probably even more, the University of New South Wales School of Medical Sciences put a huge amount of effort and resources into getting a lot of their images largely online. So it went from even the early 90s when they started photographing the specimens in the Museum of Human Disease and making them available in a digital format to their students. So prior to this, the University of New South Wales, I don't know whether, had invested a huge amount of time. There'd been PhD research projects that had helped to develop some of the tools and technologies and approaches that have now been leveraged during this time, where we've had a really strong focus on taking those and bringing them up to the right technologies so that they're endurable, and obviously improving the functionality and the robustness and the reliability of the underlying technologies. Any questions on any of that? The bottom graph thingy, which goes to 1,000, 2,000, shows you the increase in the size of the medical image bank. A lot of those images, as I said before, are around pathology and anatomy, and a lot have come from UNSW, but there's probably, Stephanie can go into that, there's really now quite a broad range of contributors as well. And again, I won't go into all the effort and work that's gone into actually having it so that when once people start contributing and see that all that work's being done, getting other people to sign that depositors agreement or the contributors agreement actually becomes abdominal compared to getting the first few over the line. Okay, I'll go through this relatively quickly. It's basically, again, just showing you how the best network's been set up, and this is, if you go to the portal, you'll see how we have these three main pillars: community, courseware and slice. Our focus in the project to date really has been around courseware, building a critical mass of content, of tutorials, of lessons, and slice, which is our medical image bank, and building, as you can see from the graph before, a critical mass of images so that when people come to the best network, they can see that there's value in getting involved in it. The first one, which we call community, is about engaging academics to come in and not just use what's there, but to say, oh, that's great, I can see what that person's doing, maybe I'll take that and adapt it and use it as my own. Someone else has given over images, I've got some images that I can contribute. So it actually starts to build a real network where people see value not just in the content and the tools, but also in the interactions with their academics. The reason why this is incredibly important is, and you might know from your own institution, sometimes it's not, like a good example is, you know, we've got some pharmacology people involved at University of New South Wales. What they do is actually not of much use. The actual concepts and ideas might be, but they're the ones that teach pharmacology. So it's really their colleagues at the University of Queensland and University of New South Wales, all the other institutions that can then leverage off this. And there's been no shortage of, you know, conferences and people coming together and sharing from different institutions. But what they haven't had today is an actual portal or a mechanism where they can go in, or a format of the content where they actually go in and share it. So that's where we see the biggest probably area of growth of the network to come. It's good. Stephanie keeps nodding like she's the first time she's ever heard it. Stephanie and I sit next together and have done for a long time, so I'm so. This is when I was saying before, you could go to the Best Network and join up as a member. Anyone who's got an education email address is allowed to join. It's obviously focused mainly in Australia, but we see that there's great advantage in having people from overseas join as well. And what will happen is, even though, so within Australia, even though you sort of think, well, why should I contribute stuff when I'm competing against, you know, University of Queensland? There's still a large belief, and you saw that before with Jeff McCall, who's from the University of Melbourne, is the more, if we all go off and do our own thing, each institution goes off and says, I'm going to create a suite of anatomy tutorials, and the next person, there's a base of stuff that's common to everyone, and the more that effort of creating the content can be shared, then the better off everyone is. And we've had, compared to the beginning of the project, a huge mind shift in that, and I think people, as they understand the urgency and the rate, the need that they're going to have to change the way they deliver materials, that's becoming more and more obvious. But obviously once you go overseas, people then become even more willing to share if they can see that it's not even people within their own country who are going to use it. So we've had quite a bit of engagement from around the world, from exotic places like the Seychelles and beautiful islands.
In this slide, why these bubbles have different colors and numbers?
Oh, they're the numbers. Sorry. So they're the numbers. So in Australia, we have 732 academics who have signed up to the Best Network, who said, I'd like to go in and have a look. I'd like to see what's involved. I'd like to be kept up to date. So yes, so that's what the numbers are.
And the colours are just to make it red.
So US, after Australia, US has second number in the party.
Yeah. So part of the reason why the US is big is that it's another English-speaking. They have similar kind of challenges that Australia has. We believe that if we can get the Best Network to have some momentum in the States, then that will help fund the Best Network, and the Australian institutions will benefit because of that. The American institutions we've spoken to today are quite happy to share. There seems to be, and maybe they feel that because it's a global thing. One of the, anyway, yeah. The next section we'll just look at is online tutorials, which are created using a technical provider called Smart Sparrows involved in the Best Network, and they've created quite separately a way of an adaptive So within the BEST network at the moment, there's about 80 different lessons across a range of different subjects. That's, as you join the BEST network, you can go in and browse those. You can deploy them in your teaching as you will. If you would like to actually use the platform and adapt them and use some of the other features, you then have to pay a fee because, as I said before, that wasn't developed as part of the BEST network. But the same way a lot of other providers in the market are doing, creating sort of pre-packaged courseware, there's a huge amount of value for people to be able to go in and have a look at these lessons, see how people are actually teaching particular aspects of the biomedical curriculum, and borrow bits of it and deploy. It can be used as complementary to the content they have already. So I'm not going to focus a lot on that today, but these 80 tutorials, and this will probably increase to about 120 by the end of the project, that are there for people who are members of the BEST network to, or anyone, any Australian educational institution to go in and use, including the ones from the College of Nursing. Thank you for your support. This just gives you a bit of an idea. When they say adaptive e-learning, adaptive seems to have a fairly broad range of different definitions. What we're talking about in this sense is that if a student gives a particular answer, usually in the case of a wrong answer, they're provided with additional materials or a different pathway to get to the next question. So it's adaptive in that sense. This diagram is actually an example of when you go, and Moodle has a similar kind of analytics thing, but you can go and you can see when students are getting the question right or wrong, which answer they're actually clicking on. So the question, there might be something wrong with the question, there may be something wrong with the way, the question wasn't covered properly in the lecture or the notes given to the student. So the correct answer might have been A, and if everyone's picking C, this academic can actually go in there and see that through the analytics and actually adjust the course materials accordingly. So that when the student goes and clicks on it next time, there might be additional information or resources that are provided to them.
So can I just ask, Smart Sparrow is the platform which this is based on, or the database, I assume? Yeah.
For the courseware, yes. Right. Yeah. So Smart Sparrow, the BEST network could have chosen any range of different technical providers, and it still might expand to actually incorporate other providers of technical of different applications. What the BEST network needed, we believed, was some way of actually being able to package up materials into online courseware. And Smart Sparrow, which actually came out of UNSW, is the technical provider of that.
So a lecturer would create that lesson in that software?
Yeah. Or they can adapt the lessons that already exist using that application. But what the BEST network says is, well, people have already contributed lessons in that format the same way that they would, you might contribute a PDF. People can take that PDF in the network and use it as is without actually paying anything for the license. But if they want to go ahead and use some of the functionality of the Smart Sparrow platform, then they need to pay the license for it.
So as a lecturer, I could have had a concept of a lesson and wanted to work this way, and then I put it into that. So I don't have to have had it in Smart Software previously,
No.
But I would take what I was doing and put it into Smart Software.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart Sparrow.
Smart Sparrow.
I've never heard of it.
No, it's used quite a bit across different biomedical areas, partly connected with the BEST network, and others completely separately. It's got some great, one of the reasons it was chosen, the way it's structured, it makes it really, really easy for sharing because everything is connected to a URL, a link that updates when you so if an academic goes in and just updates, something to do with a question or spelling, whatever it is, the link is automatically updated. So the students may have access to links via Moodle, so they've enrolled a course, they get the updated version of the courseware. This is the courseware page on the portal. It just gives you a bit of an idea. Like you can go, feel free to have a bit of a browse around it. Most of this content's been created as part of the project. Some of it hasn't. Some of it comes from for example, UTS use this platform and they've been quite happy to contribute courseware. They say, well, we're very happy for other people to use these lessons. Have you got a creature?
Yes. Sorry.
Is it safe? Yeah, so, and it gives you what, I think, not only like if you're particularly interested in the subject, subject area, but like the way that the particular lesson's been constructed, and that's probably Rebecca. Might be of value to you to see how this different online adaptive content has been put together. How images have been integrated, how video has been integrated, that kind of thing.
But I don't have, my email address isn't
I don't trust
institution.
That's right. That's still pretty good.
Okay.
you. Work for an institution.
I work for Defence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes, it's fine. So this is an example. One of the things that within the lessons, you can obviously integrate simple text, simple questions, but there's also very fancy stuff that you can integrate. So this is actually a virtual lab that was created, or it's also called a simulation. So it's HTML5. These kind of virtual labs were largely built in Flash previously. I'm not sure if people are aware of the Flash HTML5 thing. And so if you find stuff on the internet, these can be integrated into these lessons. This is one that we did as part of the project, and in the video Louise was talking about it. She created a PCR lab, which is quite a complex wet lab that a very large number of biomedical students have to do. And this is the virtual environment. There's huge advantages, obviously, because if you can't, the students can't get access to the wet lab, or the university doesn't want to fund it anymore, they can actually have a similar experience online. What's happening at the moment largely is it's being used as a complementary bit of kit, I guess, or an experience for the students. It allows the students to prepare for the lab, it allows the students to play around with the variables and helps their learning. Also, most importantly, what it does is it gives the academic the opportunity to say, okay, I want to get the students to do the first 2 steps, then I'm going to ask them 7 questions. Then I'm going to get the students to do the next bit, and then I'm going to show them a video and ask them a question. So it helps the academic present the lab in a different way online. And that's when Louise said, I can control the students' learning because she'll get them to do this either before or after the actual physical wet lab, so that she can work out what they got and what they didn't get, or the students, like obviously a lot of the institutions have a large number of international students where English isn't their first language, and what they find is that these complex kind of labs which have lots of new words, lots of new terminology, the international students are the ones that will go and spend a lot of time looking at them. And the academics report this back because they go and look at the analytics and say, it's interesting to see that, different students utilise these labs and the videos and the supporting materials around them. So this is the virtual lab that was created as part of the BEST network. We put this example in because what's actually happened is that at UNSW we've created it, and there's large cohorts of students that use it, and different lessons that are created around it. And now that it's part of the BEST network, other academics, other institutions can take it and use it as well. So this is just a bit of a table to show how the work that Louise has done, and the virtual lab is a huge amount of work. Like there's probably at least $40,000 worth of work involved in it, because they're very complex, they're hard to build, they're harder to scope up front, to make them lifelike. And one of the things that the students very much want, not lifelike, but if it's a bit clunky and it doesn't quite work and there's some bugs in it, it's a real turn off to the students. So there's absolutely no doubt you need to have the resources behind it. But the good thing is it's been part of the BEST network. It was built and now it's being used both at the University of Queensland and the University of Melbourne. The University of Queensland made a lot of changes to the lessons around that simulated lab. The University of Melbourne didn't so much, she tended to use it pretty much as it is, but there was some real differences in the timing of how different content was delivered to her students. So sometimes her modifications to the lessons would be as simple as putting a sort of a note or an information icon around a particular point saying, you've got no idea what this is because we haven't covered it in class yet, but don't panic, we cover this next week. So that the level of personalisation or repurposing that Amber did on hers was quite simple in some ways, but it really worked for her students. And that's just to give, it was actually readapting it. rather than starting from scratch, I actually would have had no hope of ever having a simulation or having lessons around it, but the editing was quite an easy process. And that's just another quote from one of the academics that we were working with last week. So this is really to introduce the idea that the image is such a tricky thing. If we go back to teach with, to access, to manage, and really the motivation for putting the application in was largely around the images and all the work that UNSW Medicine had done around sourcing images, saving them, managing them in a digital format, and starting on that process of how you actually then serve them up to students and how you use them in a learning and a teaching environment. So I'll get Stephanie to go through. Is there any questions before we move on to the image bank that people would like? Any comments, any thoughts? Okay.
Okay, so as Di mentioned, SLICE is our biomedical image bank part of our project, and we've got over 10,000 images with descriptive data within SLICE at the moment. So one of the things that started the creation of SLICE was that Professor Nick Hawkins saw a trend towards researchers sharing and collaborating on projects, but this wasn't really happening in the education space. So that kicked off this sharing of images, and at UNSW, one of the first things that they did in, 2002 was start digitising their collection of glass slides with tissue on them that they used for the study of anatomy and pathology at the microscopic level. So this involved digitising nearly 700 images, creating a server in-house to deliver them to students, and software that allowed them to view them in-house. But what we've noticed is that the servers are starting to die, and also other institutions were developing these exact same repositories. So a better solution long term was to put them all together and get everyone to share resources to create more examples of the same things that everybody studies, to allow for exam images, but also increase access to some of those rarer images. One of the other goals of the project was to make these images interactive. So instead of just delivering them to students and talking at them, the students were engaging and making their notes, marking regions, and generally being a bit more active in those classes. So we've got a wide range of images: radiology, anatomy, pathology, immunology, electron microscopy, macroscopic, microscopic, a whole big variety. So I can do a couple of searches for you later if you've got some things you'd like me to search for. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the importance of annotation, so allowing you to engage with images themselves. So one of the best examples we've seen in our time is probably Google Images, or Google Maps. They have made satellite images and directories much more interactive and allow us to find out where we're going so much quicker. So Google Earth is something I've just found recently that has much better satellite images, and you can turn off all of those layers. So I did a little test with myself and thought, okay, I'm going to see if I can find this area of the world without any markings, no street names, nothing on the map. So I knew this is in Sydney, I knew roughly where I was going, but as I'm going along the coast, I went into a couple of inlets that weren't right, and it took me a surprising amount of time to actually find where I was looking for on this map. So then once I did, by using some of these landmarks that I know only because I go here pretty much every day, I then turned on the street names just to confirm, yes, that's where I had. But again, if you don't go here regularly, you're still not going to be having much help with just the street names. And it's only when you add extra notes about these places that they become a bit more real to you, or you know where you're going. So I was actually aiming to point out UNSW in Sydney, and that's right by Randwick Racecourse, which is particularly well timed with the Melbourne Cup tomorrow, so we all like to go to Randwick Racecourse and pretend we're in Melbourne for the day. And we've got some local parks and some beaches that people are able to get to if they're quick walkers on their lunch breaks. So the same sort of premise that works on Google Maps and Google Earth works with biomedical images. So when these are delivered in class, originally students were studying on microscopes, looking at a slide, and the student next to me would have had a different slide, and the one over there had a completely different slide to the one that the teacher was studying. So they're trying to talk us through, okay, you're looking for this particular region and you're zooming in, potentially in the wrong area. Some students are looking at dust, you've got no idea what you're looking at. So if we zoom in, this is the power of virtual microscopy. These images are scanned at super high resolution, up to 40 times, up to 100 times for some images, for bone marrow images. And now we're looking at the cellular detail of this specimen, which is actually an onion root, onion tip. So this is a commonly used image in biology to study mitosis, which is cell division. It's also used at high schools and first year university. So each of these cells is undergoing division at a different stage. So if you're asking students to identify which cells are in which phase, and they're giving you answers, you're not really sure what they're looking at, it's when the power of annotation really comes into play. So I'm just going to click into this image here with the annotations, which will hopefully open up in another browser. And you'll be able to see one of these high resolution images in Slice. Is it?
I opened up the YouTube stuff earlier.
They pay for you.
It's woeful.
Yeah.
It's woeful. You can use
I
that
just
word.
don't want to think badly about the best network.
No,
It usually does
We're all
go pretty
suffering
fast.
the same.
Trust me,
Jump
it's
on my phone
defense.
connection.
Yes, it's defensive.
Horrible to death.
So this is an example of a virtual slide. So I can zoom right out to, it's only 5 times, 2 times, and the original size. Or I can zoom right into 40 times and have a look at the individual cells and what phase they're going through. So part of the software that we developed with Slice was to allow us to make these marks on anywhere on the image. It doesn't have to be a super high resolution one, it could just be a photograph, so you can mark out a region of a tumour, or on a diagram, this is a particular cell type you're looking at. Anything to do with these images, you can draw around regions and make these notes. So this is something I gave to high school teachers that came to visit us recently and said, here you go, here's an example of something you could do in your classes, label up cells for the phases of mitosis and give them out to your students as a resource. So what we've got here is a little share button that allows you to grab this long link. And if we open it in another window, this link is quite large and then it converts just to another shorter one. But it takes you to the exact region that you were looking at with that label popped up. So if I took that label down and hit it, then the link would change again. So the students are getting exactly what I'm showing them here, so they can see where I'm going. So now I'll take the opportunity to navigate through Slice to show you how to find resources. So Chris, was there something that you're currently looking for in your classes?
They're doing anatomy.
Okay.
So
And
they were looking for images on kidneys and heart.
okay.
But the issue for us is because it was going online that whatever images they used, copyright was a big issue.
Yeah. So all the images that have been contributed to our project, people are giving us a license to use them for education purposes. So pretty much if they're on here, they're good for you to use.
Awesome.
So I've just popped in the word kidney, and we've now got a lot of macroscopic images, and as we go down we'll start to see some microscopic images, and it's pretty much just every time the word kidney has appeared in body structure or a description, it's returned that as a search result. But if you're looking for something in particular, like let's see if there are any x-rays associated with kidney, you can select imaging, microscopic for microscopic images. Laboratory are usually plates and something in classes that are used, and drawings of diagrams or things like that. So then we can have a look around. Every time we click an image, this panel on the right will pop up and give you a little bit of an overview. So there's no image available here, but by clicking on them, we can now see, all right, so this is labelled as kidney, this one has a hematoma, this is who contributed it, and a little bit of the description, so we could pop that out and read a bit more to decide whether that's the one we're after. So once you've selected one, we just click the image, and that'll pop up. So some of these are not as high resolution as those other ones where we could zoom right in. This is the maximum zoom for this because it's a relatively small image. The first thing to look at is that bar along the top. So this has a transitional cell carcinoma, this kidney. And now if I wanted to interact with this image or get my students to, all I have to do is log in. So it's free to join. So this will be available for you and your students as well.
So if I was to put, an image into the course,
Yeah.
I would take the URL
Yes.
and put it in
Moodle
ways.
or yep.
But students would then have to log in once they hit that URL. Yeah.
Yep, it would take them exactly here.
Unless you did it through Moodle and they're already logged in, they're already authenticated through Moodle.
So you can have single sign-on.
Yeah, if you have integrated.
Oh, awesome.
So if talk to your administrator about getting LTI approved tool.
It just wasn't logging me in.
I'm never going to remember all those constraints.
Let me just go back to my front page. Sometimes it logs in a little bit better there, so if you're having trouble. Okay, now we're in. So I'll just go back to here. Right, so I'm logged in now. So that panel on the left that didn't have any information before has now changed because I'm logged in. I have additional functionality. Something I forgot to show you before that everybody has access to as well is this information icon, and that'll open up this panel of information that will give a little bit more of a description written by a radiologist in this example. He's provided that when he's given us the image, the type of image it is, the body structures seen, disorders, and file names as well. So you can also use this reference ID. Some image collections have been given an ID so that you could search for that entire collection. So like the Museum of Human Disease, there's codes for you to search individual cases, front, back, side of a specimen pot, or an entire collection itself. So we've got a few different ways of searching for these things. So you can just pop that into the search bar. So I'll just close that metadata panel and I click add a new layer. So I'm just going to call this Moodleposium. I can add links to these that'll turn into hyperlinks when I've pressed done. So you could be directing students to a tutorial that you've created or a PDF that's associated with the image and start to connect all these images and other resources together. So now I've got a layer that I'm ready to start annotating. I could go back to that layer level and create another one, or just work with an individual layer. So that plus layer button has now changed to add an annotation. And I can click these pin buttons or draw a rectangle, a circle, or draw a polygon shape around what I'm trying to highlight for students. And I'm just clicking each time to drop another shape and double click to end. You can also, when you click that shape to edit it, drag individual points out to make that a little bit more exact. And between each point that you drew, you can make another point to get that really well defined if you were being very fussy about something. You can also, I'll just delete that pin, hold down the Shift key and just draw around something. Done a bad job there, but it's a very quick way of drawing a shape to show to a student in class, for example. Now we can give these a name. So these are the kidneys. Filter the blood. And I can change colours. I could make them a question. So if I asked students, what is this region? I could label it as a question and then share that with them so they had to respond by duplicating the layer. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So each of the annotations can be given different colours so that they stand out well on the image. Sometimes our X-ray images, things generally look quite clearly defined, but maybe an image of a blood slide, you wouldn't want to use a pink or a purple because they're stained in those colours. So we've given you a couple of options with those. So I click done, and then that now appears on our layer. So we've got a question now. So I can pop this up and give this to my students by clicking the share button, sending that on, and if I open this in Internet Explorer, for example, somewhere I haven't logged in, it carried over my login. Okay.
So is that considered adapting an image? Is that what you pay to do? Like, there's no cost involved with, or that's only the courseware?
That's the courseware.
Yeah. What I was trying to show you, generally I can open up a different sort of browser and I wouldn't be logged in. It would say who had annotated something, like up here it'll say who's doing it. If I log in here, it's probably not going to let me, which is a bit crazy. There we go, I'm logged in. I can now duplicate the layer, and I would have been able to start editing that question that I had to respond to it. So I duplicate it to make it my own, because someone else has done it, and now I can go in, click that region, click the edit button, and I can say it's, so we've got a funny keyboard here. It's a kidney, and it does this. So now students are able to interact with the teacher by sending things back and forth and responding to resources created by their teacher. So that's about all I was going to show you on the website part. I'll just continue.
So it's the unique URL that makes it
Yes.
customised to everyone.
Yes, so it's unique to me. My annotation